Welcome to Love and Murder. I'm your host, Char. I'll be joined by our host, Ky. In today's episode, it's the chilling case of love gone cold, Alaska cold. A selfish, self-centered newlywed chooses money as a motive for murder. Stick around, let's talk about it, and let's get into Love and Murder.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new show. I'm so used to saying good evening, everyone, because our no conduct radio was always like we were recording at night. We did it live, whereas this podcast is not live. So we're usually recording this like during the day or something. But anyways, so let's start again because nobody heard that one part. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our new podcast, Love and Murder. As you know, this podcast talks about when relationships go horribly wrong. Like, for instance, when people just don't understand, just, leave, get a divorce, cut your losses, go find somebody else. Instead, they want to stab you in the neck and then say, hey, it was self-defense and I'm free. So, this podcast talks about the stories about people who have like just a little bit of a screw loose and decide that they don't just want to walk away from the murder. They want nobody else. I mean, from the murder. Good Lord. They don't want to just walk away from the relationship. They want nobody else to have you. If they can't have you, nobody can. So that's what love and murder is. Um, so I want you to be able to listen to this podcast wherever you're comfortable listening to it. So you can find us on Stitcher. You can also now find us on Apple Podcasts. We were approved for that. So yay! So you can find us on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be sure so you don't miss an episode, so you don't miss a crazy story of love gone wrong. Follow us on social media where we're going to post like the pictures of the not the victims but the people, the murderers, the people who should be basically shamed. We'll be posting pictures of them and just daily updates on what's going on with us, what's going on with the show and stuff like that. So you can follow us on Facebook at Love and Murder, but it's actually facebook.com/relationship crime because somebody already had Love and Murder taken. So, and then Instagram at Love and Murder Podcast or Love Murder Podcast. And then also, if you just want to be a great person and a producer of our show, if you love our show and you just want to help us out and you want to hear your name in the ending credits of our show, so you have producer credits, go ahead and visit us on patreon.com/love and murder. And I know you're asking, well, why are you giving your hard earned money to us? What do you get in return? Well, like I said, if you become a subscriber of $5 and above, then you actually get to become a producer of that episode. And in addition to that, you will get bonus episodes when we actually drop those bonus episodes. And if you listen to our first 3 shows, then you'll hear a couple of the crazy stories we have to tell you. Bonus episodes will be either Char's crazy life stories, which listen to episode 2 if you want a taste of that. Relationship questions that we get asked, which listen to episode 1 if you want a taste of that. Or just the craziest relationship true crime stories we could find, which, sorry Florida, but more than likely it's going to be a tale from Florida, which the one that we have coming up, which will be our first bonus episode because we have been teasing this for so long, is a brother bit off his brother's penis.
Ugh.
That's all I'm going to say. Who knows why? Is there a reason? Can you just see yourself biting off your brother's penis? Because I sure can't. I would be throwing up all over the place, but whatever.
If you had an affair with your
I still wouldn't bite my brother's dick off. So
then you would make sure that he can't screw your wife any longer.
Sure. You would bite your brother's dick off? Let me put this in terms you can understand. You would bite your son's dick off? You would put your son's dick in your mouth and bite it? You would put your son's dick in your mouth?
It's not quite the same kind.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. No, it's not.
I wouldn't even want to see my son's penis in the first place.
You said what?
I wouldn't even want to see my son's penis in the first place.
Well, that's the funny thing. You have seen your son's penis, even though he was younger. You wouldn't have seen your brother's unless you were like significantly older and you cleaned his diaper. So, which one is actually worse? Think about that.
I don't know. I guess I'll have to stay tuned, Kai, to find out exactly why this happened in the first place.
Either way, it's
What would drive
crazy.
anyone that insane?
So whenever we drop bonus episodes, which is coming up soon, that will be the first one. So those are just a couple of the benefits you get for being a Patreon subscriber of $5 and above. But if you just want to support us, then totally feel free to donate whatever you want, and we'll be happy for it regardless. And it will help Char stop melting over there in the New Mexico desert, because that's where she is,
So
and I
hot.
can't fathom how she's living day to day in 120-degree heat. So it'll definitely help her there.
Well, you get used to Vegas 16 years. I mean, what's, you can take, bring it on. Bring on the heat, as Jim in our previous episode a few weeks ago. Bring it on. I could take it. Bring it on.
Yeah. And as usual, I like to give credit where credit is due. So check out Small Town Murder. They're the podcast that I started listening to during quarantine that actually sparked this idea for this podcast here. They're amazing, they're hilarious, and I give credit, like I said, where credit is due. So check out Small Town Murder. I think they drop every Tuesday or Thursday. I don't know exactly when their podcast comes out. I just subscribe to it and I listen to it whenever it comes out. It's amazing. So, and before we start on our crazy episode, like you want to hear today's episode, it takes place in Alaska. I want to ask Char, have you ever been to Alaska, or do you know anybody that's been, and have you ever seen the Northern Lights?
No, no. As a matter of fact, Kai, it's so funny. Don't laugh, but I love Pinterest. So in my head, I have been there so many times, and I've seen the beautiful, expansive wilderness. I mean, trees upon trees. I imagine like the salmon jumping, jumping the river. During certain times of the year, the salmon jump, and the bears are sitting there waiting, salivating, like, yes, I got free food. And then, there's always the glaciers, which is the first thing I think that many people think of. And I've seen the Indian totem, or the native totem poles and things like that. So I just think it's a very, very unique culture there. Even with the Eskimo culture, and it's just a lot. I mean, I know.
Actually, it's not Eskimo Char. It's an Inuit Char.
Okay, Inuit, and is there Indian? I understand that, but do you know technically they came across the Bering Strait 600 years, 1,000 years ago, and technically they're Asian. So if you really want to be, I mean, I study all of this, so I understand they're Inuit. They're Inuit. I understand that, but the whole point is that they still have the culture of being nomads, of traveling. That's what Eskimo really means. And then they also survive by using their resources, which would be ice for a home, which technically I hear is actually warm. Did you ever hear that before? That it's so cold that it's...
Yeah, I've heard that it's warm in there because they build it in such a way that, can't they have a fire in there and not melt it or something?
Right in the middle, and it goes straight up.
I so want to go in one to see what it is like. I've seen pictures and everything, but I want to experience it myself.
Oh, so do I. So yeah, Alaska. So if our listeners can just picture, especially those that say live in Arizona, if we have listeners that are in Florida, Arizona, maybe Nevada, just a hot climate right now, a hot environment, if you can just transport yourself to a land that's probably really cold most of the time, but very, very, very rigid temperatures. And so this murder happened in a small town outside of Anchorage. So it's actually called Homer. And if there's anyone listening, if I didn't get my geography right, please correct me. But nevertheless, we're going to call this one, Kai, Cold Blooded, like the song by Rick James. Do you remember that?
Cold Blooded.
Sexy. That's great. So now let's talk about our victim profile here. I mean, again, it's cold. I don't know if you're so cold you do crazier things. I have no idea because when it's hot outside, people do tend to. Doesn't the murder rate go up during the summer? Have you ever heard that before?
Well, yeah, it was the first time I heard it when I moved up here. I know that was like 10 years ago or something. Um, that summer, I think 9 people died in one day or something like that. And the reasoning was because it was hot. And I was like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Well,
But I
the heat
come from
wave.
a
The heat waves are
tropical
what they call
temperature,
it.
so that's, it would be more because it's cold, but when it's cold, I just stay in my house. So I still wouldn't go out and do anything crazy. So for me to hear that people are doing crazy things just because it's hot, that's weird to me.
Okay, well, on the same by the same token, let's look at this statistic or example. I don't know if it's not a statistic, excuse me, but it's more of an example. Okay, when it's dark outside, okay, when it's dark outside, there's more murders happen in the dark. Does that make sense? More murders happen in the dark. People tend to do things that are peculiar and that are creepy or that are sinister in the dark. So to get back to Alaska, so Kai, were you aware that 6 months out of the year and a particular part of Alaska, I don't remember if it's near I don't know. I don't remember exactly the area, but 6 months out of the year, it's just dark. You ever heard that one?
Yeah, I know that. 6 months out of the year is dark, and then 6 months out of the year the sun doesn't set.
The sun doesn't
Which
set,
that's
right?
another phenomena I want to see.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so so the murderer here, so his name, he was actually born William Michael Dixon, but he likes to be called Mike Dixiano because he thought it had more of a ring to it, a little more exotic. It sounds a little Italian or something. And so he literally legally changed his name to Mike Dixiano. So, okay, he was age 63.
That does sound, I don't know, Mike Dixiano does have more of a ring to it than William Dixiano.
Yeah, or even then, well, okay, his name legally when he was born was William, but as they said in the report, he didn't really go by that at all. In fact, even when you look up this case, it just still says Mike Dixiano, but he basically would go by Michael for a while. Although William's his first name, Mike, which is he would go by his middle name. So he would go by Michael Dixon for a while, and then finally he said, "Nah, let's fade that one out and let's do something more interesting." And so really is considered an alias of sorts is what the authorities were saying, but still did refer to him as Mike Dixiano. And so the okay, let's look at his profile. So he didn't have any children. He was married at the time of the murder, and in fact his personality was very interesting. So if you can just picture this. So Mike Dixiano, he was a man who had a heart for counseling people struggling with substance abuse, as he once did himself. Substance abuse, particularly alcoholism, and that's something that a lot of people struggle with. So I can just imagine he overcame it, and in his heart, it was like, oh, I want to help people. That's what I want to do. I just want to help people to realize a better life without, dependency. So he really loved his career, Kai. He just really loved his career. Um, he didn't. He actually. Here's the funny thing. Have you ever heard of, have you ever been in a position where you did a job not because of the money, because maybe you didn't need the money, but because you loved what you do? Or can you ever see yourself doing something like that? Because this is pretty much where his head.
Yeah,
Could you do that?
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, I've
Yeah.
done it before.
Okay. Okay. And so have I, by the way. I've done it actually a few times. It's really humanitarianism. Humanitarianism is really what it is. To say you're just giving back to the world. But he said that he actually did not need the money at all. He worked full time as a counselor. He didn't need the money at all. He had a large nest egg inheritance, which he lived off of, as a matter of fact, well, quite comfortably. So he had a beautiful home that was paid for, just a lush life, if you can have that in Alaska, but basically meaning that he had everything that he wanted. He did everything that he wanted. He probably traveled, and, just had nice things. So he just only worked because he enjoyed it so much. Now, one of the things that Mike was obsessed with in his spare time was purchasing rare and expensive